Good morning, everyone, or I guess good afternoon. And I want to welcome you to our February Lunch and Learn, where we have Dr. Michael Stick speaking about a father's love. And I'm going to turn that over to Michael.
Well, good afternoon. I believe we have an hour, don't we?
Yes.
Okay, and it won't be that long. I do have some time for questions. In fact, if you have any questions at any time, just feel free to interrupt me. I'm a retired school teacher, and I'm used to interruptions, so not a problem. Um, I do want to introduce myself a little bit. I just said, I'm a retired school teacher. I'm also a pastor. I pastor a small Southern Baptist church in Broken Arrow. And in fact, my education is in not just education, but also in theology. And so that's where my master's and doctorate are in that field in ministry. And so a little bit about me, I do have three adult children. You probably read that, all about their early 30s, 30, 33, and 35. And the story is mainly about my middle son, Matt. When I do this presentation a lot, I've actually changed it to a family's love because my other two children just like me, very loving, very supportive of their brother. And so, sorry, just trying to admit people. And so it's more our story rather than just one. Um, there are uh, I kind of want to start with why I tell this story, and I must admit it's very difficult. Uh, Everything ended as far as the world changed, I guess you should say. And if you've experienced loss, you know what I'm talking about. But my family's world changed on October 5th, 2012. And about 2013 or so, shortly after that, I decided that I needed to tell the story. My son was still incarcerated at the time, and I began writing and telling. And it took about 4 years to write my book, A Father's Love, mainly because I wanted, well, honestly, it was just very difficult to do. And the reason I share the story is not to scare people, but to educate people, because people need to understand and know that things like what happened to my family can and do happen. Unfortunately, I have uh, a group of Zoom, a support group on Zoom of people all around the United States who share the same story that my family has lived, and we've become more of a family together. In fact, one gentleman from Boston has become one of my best friends, and he's flown down here twice just to visit and spend time with my family. So, just very important to have those connections. Well, the story started in actually long before 2012. Uh, to understand it, I need to tell you a little bit about my wife's background. Her name was Veronica. I met her when I was in college. She was 16 years old. She was a junior in high school. And I was a youth minister in a small town just outside of Tahlequah. And the small town was, well, I don't know if any of you know anything about chicken houses. I didn't want to talk about chicken houses today because if you know anything about them, they stink really, really bad. And I had surrendered to ministry. And my very first church, I was in college, I was a junior, and I went to a town called Westville, little bitty town surrounded by chicken houses. And I remember when I was talking to the committee in Southern Baptist Life, they have committees that call pastors and youth ministers and things. And so I was speaking to them, and they wanted to talk amongst themselves. So they asked me to step outside. So I walked outside of the church. And when I walked outside, it almost knocked me over from the stench. It is really bad. And I thought, God, you don't want me here. Well, he did. He called me there. And then about a week after arriving uh, in the summer of 1986, I went down to shoot some uh, baskets at the basketball goal at the church. It was hot. School was getting ready to start. And I was laying there in the shade. And a girl, she was 16, had walked around the back of the bus and didn't see me laying there. And when she did, she almost stepped on me. And I scared to death. I scared her to death. And anyway, it was Veronica, and she lived just, 2 or 3 houses down the road. And so after talking a little while and visiting, she wanted me to meet her mother and her grandmother. And I went and met them, and they just became family. She became, at the time, I was a minister in the church. And after I graduated college, I moved on to seminary. And the time I was there, she was didn't have a father. And she met my mom and dad, who came down a lot. And my dad basically became her dad. My mom was like another mom to her. And she was like, just like my sister or something. And then we became best friends after that. And I always encourage people, always marry your best friend. That's the way you should do it. Well, long story short, her mother, Veronica, struggled with depression ever since I've known her. She was diagnosed in her early 20s with major depressive disorder. Come to find out later, her mother in her 20s was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. And we know that there are many other things wrong with her. She was delusional. Her mother, talking about her mother, was just always delusional. In fact, she would tell people later that I used to date Faith Hill before I met her daughter. I'd like to think that's true, but it wasn't. And so anyway, but she just, if it came out of her mouth, she believed it. And so she had two sisters. My mother-in-law had two sisters who also struggle with mental illness, depression, and things. And so we saw a lot of that in her family. And even though we saw it, I didn't know anything about it. When my wife was diagnosed, she began, seeking treatment and everything. And for about the last 10 years of her life, she really struggled with medications. The psychiatrist would change medications all the time, and nothing ever worked. And I know that many of you have loved ones or yourself may struggle with depression, and I know you understand how that is. But she would just stay in bed for days at a time and cry. And I knew nothing about her depression, about mental illness. I was totally ignorant of it. And, we don't play what if games, but looking back, I wish I had learned more about it at that time. I did go with her to appointments some and learned a little bit, but not enough to know what to do. I did what I could to try to make her happy, and it sometimes just didn't seem to work. Well, unfortunately, my son Matt also began to struggle in his teen years with what began with depression. At that time in 2000, about 2006 to 2012, I was a church planter and school teacher in North Tulsa. And I'd always been full-time ministry up until that point. And then we decided rather, that we wanted to start a new church. And we were called to that area of North Tulsa, which is um, not, well, it's a predominantly African American community. And so we didn't understand why. We just knew that we were. So I took a job teaching school in the community. And it was probably about the best 5 years of ministry that I ever had. It was absolutely great. Struggle, but the blessings were just wonderful. In 2012, uh, we lost our funding, and so I had to stop planning. Well, in the meantime, my son, when he was 16, began struggling with some depression, and I was just really busy. I was teaching school, trying to start a church, and just busy with everything. And my wife, knowing what depression looked like, saw it in Matt, and she was really in tune with him, and they were very, very close as a mother and son. And the story really began about that time at 16. In 2012, in about May. You know what? Let me show you a couple of pictures. I'm going to try to do this because I want you to see Veronica, and I want you to see Matt. That gives you a little bit of background. So I believe I'm going to let me open what I need to open first. I think that's how we do it. The first picture I want to share is probably one of my favorite pictures of my wife, if I can figure out how to share it here. Where did the bar was here a minute ago, now it left me. Okay, there it is. Um, okay, can you see the picture? It should be coming up soon. There it is. Okay, that was Veronica, uh, taken in her probably her mid 20s before the depression got really, really bad. And she loved cotton candy, obviously. So let me show you another one very quickly. Oh, and forgive me for pressing the wrong button sometimes. I'm really good at doing that. And this is a picture of my family when the kids were younger. And Matt is the one with the glasses I'll be talking about soon. He was about 10, probably 9 or 10 there. And let me show you one more, just so you can see Matt a little bit better as he. Um, okay, this is a picture of Matt, and at the time, his girlfriend Shelby. Matt was about 19 here. This is right before his psychotic break. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of background into what they kind of look like in the picture. Well, Matt was an artist and still is an artist, but he was a really good artist at the time. He did a lot of what's called street art, a lot of, I'll show you another picture of this is a one, this is a picture of street art that Matt did. It was a legal wall that he did it on, but it was done with spray cans, spray paint. And as you can see, he loved to do portraits, still does portraits, uh, does a lot of them, loves to do them. Okay. And so that was sort of his life, was art and just being a teenager. He graduated when he was 19 and started college, and he began to struggle that last year before he turned 20. He was really struggling. He couldn't hold a job. Everything just seemed to overwhelm him. He would go to school and he took art classes and some other things at TCC, and he just had to stop because it was just too much for him. And we didn't understand at the time. You know, being a teacher, I didn't understand why he couldn't do it. Um, and again, my wife was much more in tune with him than I was. In May of 2012, Matt and I talked with Veronica, and we figured out then that he had a little bit of depression, just like her. And so at that point, we had lost all of our health insurance. My wife had our insurance with the church that she worked at as a secretary, and she was actually terminated. Uh, they said they were reducing their, the size of the workers, but um, it was. I don't think it was that. She was struggling with anxiety attacks. She also had that as well. Anxiety, struggled with anxiety attacks, and had several at work, and that just shuts everything down. And so finally, they terminated her, and because of that, we lost our health insurance. So at the time we first started, Matt, or we didn't have any. And so we decided to go to the Claremore Indian Hospital. I'm half Cherokee. My father's full blood. And so, of course, the kids are quarter. So we could go there. So we went in May of 2012, knowing something was wrong. And we were told then that they do not do behavioral health. And so we went back and we didn't really know what to do. It didn't seem real bad and kind of did, but again, we were really unaware of it. And so in beginning of September 2012, I was going back there for another health issue. I don't remember what it was. And Matt said, "Can I go with you again?" So we went back. And this time they told us they did do behavioral health. And so we went to the department and they put him on a waiting list. They said, "Well, we will see you." And it was 2 months in the future in November. And so they said, "Well, and that one will just be for an evaluation with a group and decide if you really need this or not." And that's when he began having some issues. Matt first began having sort of, I guess you would call them blackouts. He would just go missing for an hour in his mind. He would be with his friends, and then he would just come to 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour later and think, where am I? What's going on? And they'll just tell him, you've been acting weird, acting strange. And so these began to happen. And then he would also, and this I found out after the fact, after it was all, everything happened. And then he would speak gibberish to his friends, things that they couldn't hear. And I found out later he was hearing things as well, hearing them saying odd, strange things to him. And these began to increase. Again, we didn't know. Matt would come in the living room and he would talk about things like quantum physics and all sorts of stuff like that. He knew nothing about that stuff. And but he would talk about just some very, very unusual things. I want to show you a text message, a series of text messages. And these were with Shelby, his friend. And this was about the time that he started having these sort of blackouts. And you can see it, the first one, he said, I feel as if my brain looks for an opportunity to self-destruct. Can you see those, by the way? I believe you can. And drag me down. I see it happening, but I'm helpless to change. And she said, that's not true. You're not helpless. And he never said, I was helpless in my reactions to it, but that I'm helpless in the fact that it happens without cause or reason. And then he said, my higher brain is capable of realizing this and attempting to cope with it, but it happens sometimes, even when good things are happening to me. And the last one, and this is the one where I believe that the psychosis was beginning. He said, it's not a control issue. What I'm saying is that this creeping feeling comes over me. It just happens and very well may have physical causes. But I think it's that creeping feeling that he was talking about as he began to have these blackouts, I guess you would say. And whoops, on that day, October 5th, well, the night before, October 4th, I had this strange, weird feeling. My other son was living at that time. He was 21, I believe, 22. He was at that time living with his girlfriend. And I couldn't sleep that night, October 4th. I couldn't go to sleep, but I was worried about my other son. And so I told Matt, I said, I'm worried about Jordan. I haven't talked to him in a few days. He hadn't answered his phone. And so I said, I'm going to drive out to where he worked. He worked overnights at Hard Rock Casino. And so Matt went with me and we drove out there and found out he wasn't working that night. And so we drove over to her house and his car was there. And so I thought, okay, he's there. He's okay. And for some reason, just worried. So Matt and I went to Village Inn about 2 or 3 in the morning, had some French fries and good talk, and everything seemed perfectly normal. Come to find out, he hadn't slept in several days. He'd been talking to his dog, or our family dog, a lot, and the dog was talking back. And so all this stuff I didn't know about. He just didn't share it with me. And then on October 5th, I went to work as usual. I was teaching school in North Tulsa. And that day, my wife had to take me because my car was in the shop. I was supposed to pick it up after school. And the plan, it was on Friday, October 5th, 2012. The plan was for us to go to see my daughter Katie's football game. No, wait, she didn't play football. She was in color guard to the Union football game where she was in color guard. Get that right. And so I was going to pick up Matt at home, then go pick up Veronica. Matt worked at the same church as Veronica, also Unitarian church at that time. She did get another job at church, and he was working with custodial staff, but he was off on Friday. So he was home. And so about 2:30 or a little bit after 3 o'clock when school got out, I got a phone call. And the phone call was from Matt. And he said, he was crying. And he said, Dad, I'm lost. Come and get me. And I said, what? Where are you? And he said, something's happened. Come and get me. And I said, well, Where are you? I thought he had a car wreck. He was supposed to take his mom back to work. And I assumed he had had a wreck or something had happened. And he said, I don't know. Come and get me. So I said, well, look at the signs. Tell me where you are. I'll go pick up my car at the shop and I'll get home. And he hung up. So I started calling back and called him back. And he would say, Dad, I don't know where I am or something. And I'd hang up. And we had several calls like that. And finally, he wouldn't answer the phone. And then he finally called me back and he said something that I have no earthly idea what he said. It was just gibberish, and hung up. And that was the last time that I talked to him. And um, so I picked up my car, had another teacher drop me off, and I was anxious to get home. So I had no idea. Veronica wouldn't answer her phone. And I drove home as fast as I could, got there as quickly as I could. And when I pulled up to the house, I saw a fire truck, police cars, and lights, and an ambulance and everything. And my heart just sank. I thought something had happened to both of them. And I parked about a block away and ran up to the house. And I saw my wife lying on the ground. And the paramedics were around her trying to revive her. And I got close and she had a hole in her chest. And my first thought was someone shot her, someone broke in or something. I had no idea what. And then I realized our van was gone. And somehow I knew what happened. I just knew what happened. And Matt that day, about an hour earlier, had a psychotic break. And he and my wife, they were watching a TV show called Revolution. And in that TV show, there is a a character, and this character is the main character of the show. If you remember that series, and he had a sword with a pair of brass knuckles for a handle. And in my son's mind, that was a warning to him that he was that character, and the apocalypse had begun. And at that moment, his mind was completely gone. Later, our psychologist would tell me that tried to evaluate him 6 days afterwards that he had never seen he couldn't even evaluate him. He said he was too far gone to evaluate. And he said he'd never seen a person as far gone as that. And so he was that character. And what had happened is when that happened, he went back to his room. He stuck the knife in his belt for protection, and he entered another reality. And this world was full of darkness and demonic spirits and everything. And that's what he was seeing. And let me show you a picture of him talking about psychosis. Let me share this again. This is what Matt wrote. This is a page from our book, A Father's Love. And he said psychosis is a very tricky thing. It jumbles thoughts to the point that it's almost impossible to make any sense of it. About the best way to describe it is by comparing it to a dream. In a dream, you do strange things, think strange things, but all the while, everything makes perfect sense at the time. It's like logic and reasoning go out the window. Imagine having those types of thoughts, but while fully conscious. And to Matt, that was reality. And so he went into the living room and he went into the kitchen, and he was supposed to take Veronica back to work. And she was out in the van waiting. And when he was late, she came back up the steps into the door, and she was, yelling for him, I've got to get back to work. And she rounded the corner, and his first thought was she's has these demons in her, and he had to save her. And the only thing he think to save her was with the magical knife that he had, and he had to destroy the demons. And so she rounded the corner, he plunged a knife into her heart, and it killed her within seconds. She stumbled back out into the porch, and fell down the steps into the yard and was gone. Matt went and got a walking stick that he had in his room and the knife and went on a spiritual journey. And in that journey, he was leading his mother to heaven. And so he went to and stopped at a school that was releasing. He parked the car, he got out, and he stood while the children just went around on the sidewalk watching them. And in his mind, he was their protector. He was there to guard them from the darkness all around him. And then after they left, he ran. He left the car there running so that another traveler could have it. And then he ran, and he wound up at the church a little bit later that he worked at, and that's where the police found him and arrested him. In Matt's mind, he was trying to save his mother, and that day, I I really felt like I lost not only my wife but my son too, and they were both gone. To lose two at the same time like that is just very difficult, to say the least. Well, Matt would spend 22, I think about 22 months in segregation at the Tulsa County Jail, David L. Moss, which is segregation is isolation. And so he would be without human contact, except for the guards looking in every now and then for the next almost 2 years. And we were really blessed. I know that's hard to say, but a man named Dr. Tracy Loper, he works at Edmond now with OU. I don't know if anybody knows Dr. Loper, but Dr. Loper was the jail psychiatrist at the time. He went to see him and he started him on medication almost immediately, shortly after Dr. Grundy, who's up near Bonita, after he saw him. He started him on Zyprexa, an antipsychotic, and Celexa, I believe, a mood stabilizer. And today he's still on those same medications. They've worked for 13 years and wonderfully. Well, he would spend almost about 2.5, a little over 2.5 years at David L. Moss before a trial. And the trial is another, just the way it all worked out. We waived the right to a jury trial because we knew that was not the way to go. We went with a bench trial, meaning that the judge would make the decision. We went through several court things, tried to have preliminary hearings. I believe I went to the courthouse 17 times, and it was passed each time. And finally, we had preliminary. Finally, we had a trial date set, and then it was passed a couple of times. We finally, in May of 2012, had the trial. And William LaFortune, who's the former mayor of Tulsa, was our judge. And also a wonderful man. I could tell you some more about him. Don't want to get ahead of myself, but Matt, we did have a gallery. He had a gallery opening here about a year ago, and Judge LaFortune was there. Well, anyway, so we had the bench trial, and of course, evaluations done. Dr. Sean, is it Sean Roberson? I believe some of you may know him. He's in Oklahoma City. He works a lot with these cases, evaluating people who claim the insanity plea, which very few, I don't know how many of you know anything about that, but very few people claim that, and very seldom does it actually, they find the people not guilty. Well, Dr. Roberson diagnosed him with bipolar 1 disorder with psychotic features. Dr. Grundy, for the defense in Oklahoma City, or in Bonita, came back later, also diagnosed him with bipolar 1 disorder with psychotic features. And Dr. Loper, who had been treating him, also diagnosed him with bipolar 1 with psychotic features. And so all three agreed. And so when we went to trial, of course, all the evidence was presented. There was no doubt what had happened, and just presented the facts of his psychotic break and his diagnosis and everything. And based on course, Oklahoma law, he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. And he was sent to the Oklahoma Forensic Center indefinitely. And let me show you a couple more pictures, if I may. Um, this picture that I'm showing you right now, he painted this 3 days before his psychosis. This was at a free wall, graffiti wall here in Tulsa, and that's Matt. And it says you have to lose your mind to find it. That was from a song, but it's very, I don't know, like a premonition or something to me. Also, let me see if I can do this. Um, this was taken, or this picture was after the fact, after he was found NGRI. And we went for about 2.5 years. And during that time, there were no one was talking about it. We couldn't get a trial. It just seemed to go on forever. And so finally, I talked with Jenny Graham at the Tulsa World, who wrote a story about our story. And I believe that story really helped. And so did our attorneys, public defenders, really helped with some things happening. And in fact, I've talked with the detective, and that was on the case at that time, uh, and he agreed that made a big difference. Well, Jenny wrote a follow-up story here. It said, and of course, you can read what Matt wrote. I didn't understand insanity before it happened to me. I believe you can see these stories online if you look. And we share this. We did all this, and we talked about this long before, that we want to tell a story to help people. In fact, Matt even said in that newspaper article, and I'm paraphrasing, he said something that if I'm if I think I'm going to hurt someone again, I don't want to be out of here. I don't want to be where I can hurt someone. But fortunately, that didn't happen that way. Um, he was found not guilty, sent to the Oklahoma Forensic Center, and there he would spend about 9 years. And when he went, the doctor said that he was already in recovery, and so he just continued to get better and better. And he really was just doing great the entire time. Um, you know, as I say, there's a video made by Kelly Kerr called "The Advocate" that you can look up. About a 4.5 minute video, and for Father's Day at his church. And um, in that video, I talk about him coming home. When we first started this whole process, this whole thing of the courts, everything happened. My family, we talked a lot about it. My kids and I, my brothers, my mom and dad, and we just faced everything head on. We were very open with each other and talked with each other and shared with each other how we felt and everything. And we all no one wanted him in prison. No one. We all knew what happened, that he had had a psychotic break, that his mind was broken. And we all wanted him to come home. And so for 9 years, I visited every chance I got at Bonita, saw him, was very involved in his care, met with the doctors there and everything, and very, very supportive. My mother was the same way. She visited with me every Sunday after church until she passed away in 2018. But finally, every year, if you know anything, I don't know if how many of you know anything about Oklahoma Forensic Center, but anyone that goes there has an annual review. And each July, he would have a review. And it started out with, in about 2023, I believe, he would get 8-hour passes. And then he got the next year a month home, 8-hour pass a month, then a weekend home where he could come home for the weekend. And then in 2024, he was approved for conditional release. And so this picture I want to show you now is a picture of him. This is one of my favorite pictures of all time, by the way. This picture of him coming home. My brother's driving. He's in the car, and we're on our way home. He came home on August 2nd, 2024. and has been home since. While we were at Oklahoma Forensic Center, he was absolutely the perfect patient there, I guess you would say. He never was written up for anything. He was just so good. He got to do some painting there, murals on a wall. He produced a lot of art drawings while he was there. And since then, he's done even more. The pictures right there behind me are some of his airbrush art. And I do want to show you just a couple, and then I'll let you ask any questions if anybody wants to. Here is one. This is my favorite piece. Whoops, that's the wrong one. Favorite piece that he's done. Let me find it. I'm sorry. That one came back up. Told you I click on the wrong places sometimes. Well, this was one that he did while he was there. And he does a lot of native art. And this was done in graphite and pencil. And so he's very talented. He's been exploring doing different types of art, different things, lots of different things. And I know you get to hear about that later. But he came home, and this coming summer, he's being recommended, we believe, by the doctors for full release. And at that point, we're happy with what we've got, believe me. But he is home, doing great, in recovery, and just a wonderful young man. And I'm very proud of my son. So, and very blessed, I might add, to have him home. Andy, I'm through if anybody wants to ask questions or anything.
Cindy says it's heartbreaking that you have this story to tell, and I'm so grateful that you are telling it. Thank you and Michael both for your bravery to share all of this. I've spent my career working with most ill in our community, and sharing experiences like this can only lead us to help others better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions, comments? Feel free to unmute yourself. And
I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me. This is Justina.
Yes.
Okay, great. I have a question for Michael. As far as when you guys went with Matt in May for the Cherokee Hospital, they said they did not offer a behavioral treatment, and then suddenly in September they do. So do you think it was just like their omission, or they just introduced the behavioral treatment in September?
Hi, Justina. She's in a family class right now with no, somebody told us that they didn't know what they're talking about, is what it amounted to. Yeah, they had it all along. The person that told us that just didn't know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else have any questions? I might add one thing. One question I get a lot is, how can you forgive your son? And my answer is very simple. I don't have anything to forgive, because it wasn't my son who killed his mother. It was mental illness. And so we worked through all that. Trust me, we've talked a lot about that. Anybody else have a question for me? I appreciate everybody joining, by the way. Thank you.
Shelley put in chat, incredible testimony, and what very talented is your son. I must get to my class as well. Thank you so much for sharing and giving us hope. Laura, were you going to ask a question?
Yes, thank you so much for sharing. And I guess I'm trying to understand. I have a son who has schizophrenia, and he's had a couple episodes. He's medicated now and doing well, but I guess I'm trying to understand any potential differences between the bipolar 1 and the schizophrenia, and any similarities I should know about.
I know that there are both, obviously totally different. Matt's psychosis was caused by mania. It's my understanding that with bipolar disorder, that if it used to be called manic depressive, that if you go real high in mania, that you can have a psychotic break or low. And as long as you're, with mood stabilizers, it balances. But he went real high. He'd been up for 3 days, probably something like that. I don't know, a long time. And I'm not so sure about schizophrenia because I don't have any experience with that. So I really can't say. I know that
Understood. Mhm.
that has, delusions, hallucinations too. So
It tends to be when the two occurrences he had, they were like 6 months to a year apart. But something would tell him he couldn't sleep. He had an inability to sleep, so that, that's concerning. But he had voices that seemed real and that he needed to listen to. And they would tell him things that weren't for his best interest, and they would tell him not to sleep, and they would tell him not to eat, and very concerning things. So yeah, but I'm so glad that your son is better now. That is awesome. I'm
thank,
just trying to fully
thank you.
understand what kinds of things we deal with to help them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
I
I
know we've
quickly ask something about Matt's work. Is he still, I'm sure he's still painting and drawing. Is it still available for purchase? Is he selling his art?
Yes, in fact, that's what he does mostly. He goes to a lot of different shows, a lot of different, really any place he can go to sell it, he goes. And he doesn't have a set place. He does a lot of it online. He does a lot of different things, and he's always doing doing new stuff, trying new techniques, new everything. So yeah, you can see it. He has Facebook page art. I believe it's Matt Stick Art, or is it Art by Matt Stick? It's one or the other. I think it's Matt Stick Art or something like that you can see a lot. And someone had a comment. I just saw it, but
Kelly said, I appreciate your testimony and strength. Bipolar patients often stop taking their medication. What has inspired Matt to keep taking his meds?
oh, good. That's a really good question. Probably better for him to say, but speaking for him, I would say that he has a complete understanding of his need. I have high blood pressure, and I know that without my medication, it's going to have a bad effect on my health. He understands just as much as I do that that he needs medication for his bipolar disorder. And so he just has a very high awareness of it, I guess you would say. Yeah. We talk about that a lot too. He'll say, Dad, I know I need this. The rest of my life, I need this medication.
I know we've requested that hopefully Matt will speak next month and kind of share his side of the journey and how he's faced everything he's faced in his recovery and his art. So look for our announcement for that, and hopefully we'll get that out there. And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, he's
excited to hear
excited
his
about it.
side. I'm excited to hear his side of the story.
Yeah.
I think he's an
Thanks to both
amazing
of
young
you
man.
for sharing.
Thank
You
you.
today and him in the future. Thank you.
A. Bradley says, thank you for being an advocate, helping others understand the impact of real lives and the incredible ripple effect that treatment or lack of has on us all. Well, if anybody has
And I
any
will say
more,
too that,
go ahead.
so I will say if anyone needs hope, he is the one who gives hope. I mean, it's this story is his recovery is just I don't know. It's more than we could ever even pray and hope for. How well he's doing. You know what, Nami? What we say: never give up hope, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, if anybody has
So
any more, oh, go ahead, Lauren.
I had gotten to meet Judge LaFortune and know him briefly, and I was just guess going to ask, did he understand quickly, or did it take a lot of convincing him for him to get the whole situation?
That's a good question. I really don't know. I know Judge LaFortune's wife works in mental health,
Yes.
and I know there are several people instrumental that we talked to that, that are advocates for mental health. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I know that when Matt had an art showing, like I said, about a year ago, that he and his wife came. And so that was very encouraging. And to be able to visit with him and, know, and of course, he knows that was the right decision on his part because, we put my son's life in one man's hands
Mm-hmm.
and definitely the right decision.
Yeah, I've known him to be a really amazing person. So
Yeah.
glad that you had that opportunity to.
Yeah, we are too. We definitely are too.
Melina says, thank you for sharing your testimony, Dr. Stick. We are so appreciative of your time and vulnerability. Never give up hope.
Man.
Well, if nobody has any more questions or anything, we're going to give you back the rest of your day. But if you do have questions or thoughts, contact us. We'll get you in touch with Dr. Stick. And also look for next month's Lunch and Learn because it'll be an extension of this. And you'll get to hear from Matt himself and how he's dealt with his journey and where he's at now. So again, let us know if you have any questions. And if not, we're going to let you get back 11 minutes of your day.
Okay. Well, thank y'all for being a part.
Thank you so much.